Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. I'm excited to share an amazing success interview with you. I probably won't say that. So if I bring up the book and I say, stop doing that bleep, you can fill in the blank.
Yeah,
is that
that's fine.
Is that okay? Just so I received the books. You have a new book.
Right. Stop doing that shampoo.
Stop doing that shampoo. Awesome. I tell you what. In today's success interview, I was privileged, and I don't say that lightly, I was privileged to interview New York Times bestselling author and thought leader, Gary John Bishop. Maybe, just maybe you've heard of his books before. This book was a New York Times bestseller, and you know what? Here's his new book that just came out called Stop Doing That Bleep. Stop doing that shampoo. The subtitle is End Self-Sabotage and Demand Your Life Back. I tell you what, I have spent the last 24 hours reading every page of this book. And the whole time I was reading it, I was going, yep, that makes sense. Ooh, that's pretty bold. But yep, that's true. That makes sense. Yep. I'm telling you, it was amazing. In fact, I think in this interview, it's the longest interview I've had with any guest so far. And every minute is worth it. So I can't wait for you to get into this interview as Gary shares with us what it means to be a human being, what it means to be authentic, what it means to be drawn by a future that inspires you. We're going to talk about all those things and much, much more. We'll dig into it. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the interview. Gary, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, TJ. I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, it is a privilege to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So one of the things that I ask many of the guests that come on the show to start with is a little bit of their background. What is their story leading up to today?
Yeah.
Well, so if you don't mind giving us that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Scotland, if you haven't worked it out yet, right?
Yeah.
So if you close your eyes, I sound just like Shrek. I came to the United States in 1994. And I was already a fully grown human being by that point. You know, I wasn't too young. I guess I was in my mid-20s. And, you know, obviously the accents hung around, but I came to the United States actually as a musician. I had dreams of being like a rock star or something. I used to wear green velvet pants and I had long hair. And it was a brilliant time in my life, you know. It was just a great time to be alive. You know, I was in my mid-20s. I was writing music and I was, you know, getting paid a tiny little amount of money to do it. And I met my wife and we got married, obviously, you know, very quickly. We've been married now for going on 22 years.
Awesome.
And which says a lot more about her than it does about me, trust me. but when I lived in Scotland, I lived just a regular life. You know, I lived in a little apartment. I drove to work every day, you know, and I did what I did. But I had this kind of yearning for something else. You know, I had this kind of internal candle burning, if you like, that I wanted to do something else in my life, and I didn't know what it was. And, you know, I'd been involved in music for so long. So coming to the States seemed like a great idea. And then, you know, we got offered some money to make music, so we did it. And I did that for about 9 years, actually. Okay. And then somewhere in my late 30s, you know, my wife's brother, my brother-in-law, said to me, you know, you should do this personal development workshop, which, you know, I mean, who does those things? Anyway, so that was my
You're looking at one right now.
Right, but that was my view at the time.
Totally.
My view at the time was like, what kind of loser does workshops,
right.
You know? I'm like, what are you working on exactly? I'm trying to make money here, right? Which was so arrogant and so out of touch and so like numb to what's possible, you know? But that was my view, Ash. And my exact words, I remember it clearly. My exact words were, I'm not doing your stupid course, you know. And he said, I'll pay for it. And I said, when is it? Right. So I did it. I did the course, and it was such a shock to me, you know. There was so much logic and good sound reasoning going on. It wasn't what I was expecting. I thought we were going to build a bonfire and hold hands, you know. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't at all. It's this really cool, very plain way of starting to kind of interact with yourself and how you interact with the world and how you interact with people. And so that workshop, I mean, I came out of that thing just on fire, like, wow, like it just introduced me to a world where I could make sense to myself. Mm-hmm. And that was the initial game. The initial game was like, how do I work? How, what is it that makes me that and not that and this and not this? And, but I was engaged with this logic that allowed me to kind of transcend and transform aspects of myself that I'd known I was blocked by. Mm. And then the other aspects that I didn't even know were in the way. Like, wow, like that's been what's got me by the throat for all these years. And then again, very quickly, I realized that not only was the work on myself working, but I was becoming more and more proficient at being able to talk to people about it and penetrating, not just telling them like I did this course and but saying I got this and then connecting it to them in such a way that they were actually getting something for themselves. So in very short order, like within a couple of years of doing that program, I was a senior program director at one of the largest personal development companies in the world. I traveled all over the world delivering transformational programs to tens of thousands of people in every culture you could imagine. And I got this like rapid experience of humanity, like what it is that connects us all. If you can get beyond culture, if you can get beyond gender, like what's going on,
right? Right.
So I did that for about 4 years, and it was intense. I mean, the actual training was more like 5 years, and then about 4 years of delivering it.
Right.
And it was just some of the most radical, mind-bending, allowed me to start to think in different ways, engage with thinking in different ways.
This was the workshop you were putting on?
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah. And then I ended up, like becoming, like a top performer in that. But I was on the road for like 33 weeks of the year. It just didn't work for my family. It was just too much. So I quit. And it was a shock to everyone that I quit, because I was really, I was very successful at it and did really, really well at it.
Right.
And I quit, and I had no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just realized, like, I want to be with my wife and my sons. That's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So then within about a year, like I'd consulted a little bit with a friend of mine who owned a company and this kind of neuroscience project he was working on, which was good from my aspect. My expertise, if you like, is more like ontology and phenomenology, which are disciplines of philosophy. And then I started a little coaching business, and this would have been about 2015.
Okay.
And then, a friend of mine had said, you should write a book. And I thought, what a stupid idea. I keep writing this stuff. Like, I don't know anything about writing books. I can't write a book. What am I going to say, And they said, no, just do what you do. Just go ahead and, So, and this was a really great thing for me, because part of my internal dialogue, if you like, my internal critic, the fundamental one that binds it all together for me is I'm not smart enough.
Yeah. No.
So if you can imagine writing a book and what's ticking away is I'm not smart enough. Like every day was just like, I wanted to quit. I'm done. I can't do it. But I wrote the book, and I wrote the book primarily to just make a difference. I wasn't out to impress anyone.
That was right. That was this book.
Unbleep yourself, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm being nice right now.
No,
But that book, I self-published it in late 2016. We sold 30,000 copies in 5 months. It just went crazy. Right. And then I started the offers from publishers, and I think I had like 22 publishers who wanted to pick the book up. Mm-hmm. And I settled on one. I settled on Harper One, which is an imprint of HarperCollins.
Right.
And the book just exploded. I mean, it's now sold, I think, over 800,000 copies. It's close to, it'll be 1 million within the next couple of months. It sells just as well now as it did when we brought it out. It sold 500,000 audiobooks. It's just phenomenal success. And I think one of the things that people really appreciated was, it's not an arrogant book.
Yeah.
It's not filled with stories. Mm-hmm. It's not filled with filler.
Right.
The book is very to the point, and and I put as much wisdom as I could into a book of that size without aggrandizing or trying to make it bigger than what it is, which is one of my passions. I want to make this kind of work available to everyday folks, just people who maybe wouldn't do this kind of work. Or, you know, like I just got an email a couple of days ago from a guy who drives an 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I had a speaking engagement a couple of days ago. Like I said, I had one of the waitresses in that place come up to me at the end and thank me for what I said. And the people around me were like, "Oh, that was fantastic." I goes, "No, this is my people. This is who I talk to. This is who I want to get to. If you're like a multi-gazillionaire, I don't need to talk to you. Go talk to your shrink or something."
Yeah.
You know, I want to talk to the people that are struggling, can't make it, suffering. Like they're my folks, and those are the ones that I want to make a difference for. And that's what all my books and all my works and all my talks, they're all about making a difference.
And that is so true. You have, you know, I wrote somewhere in my notes here, I'll just go off the top of my head here, that you have, you speak from a very human, real place. And your wordsmithing ability, it's simple, but it's rich in its nature. And I think I can see why your books are so successful, and your style about you is so authentic, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
I just love, so I received the books. You have a new book.
Right. Stop doing that shampoo.
Stop doing that shampoo. Awesome. I tell you what, I've been burning through this the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I keep going, aha. I mean, it's just amazing. Some of it is stuff I've written about in the past.
Right.
You do it in your own style and way. And I'll tell you what, talk about, the subtitle is End Self-Sabotage and Demand Your Life Back. Everyone needs to get this book. I'm telling you, it's powerful. So let me go back just a little bit. What would make your brother-in-law think, hey, you should get into the personal development industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that one because I was a train wreck. You know, my life was all about work. I was myopic. Like I wasn't here for what was here. And I made great money, but I didn't know how to be loving.
Yeah.
You know, which was such a and I just thought I was getting away with it by being productive.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll be a loyal, productive husband. That should do it. You know, and somewhere in there, like in my life pathway, I'd forgotten how to love somebody. Like I'd literally got tracked in what I thought would get me where I was going, and which wasn't even clear about, by the way. I was just going.
Yeah.
Right. My life wasn't about anything. It had no context. It was just I was suffering in the content of life, as I like to call it, which is, you know, going to work, putting gas in the car, paying the mortgage. Like that's all the content. There was nothing in there to kind of bring any aliveness out. You know, I had good sense of humor and very hardworking and fairly okay guy to get to know.
Sure.
But still, by the same token, like it was a terrible waste of a life. Like what's the point of this was kind of where my brother-in-law was coming from. He was like, he obviously saw something in me that, you know, I was either ignoring or just completely oblivious to. And it was an awakening. And it wasn't an awakening in the way, you know, like you might be sitting on the slopes of the Andes up to your eyeballs in ayahuasca. It was an awakening, like, oh my God, like it suddenly things, like I said before, just made sense. They clicked.
And I'm assuming that with your, I just being real here for a second, I'm assuming the being on stage playing was exhilarating to you, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you're able to still, with your new passion, your new life, you're finding your mission in life, your vision, and living it, that you're able to capture some of those angles as well, I would assume.
There might be a couple of nuances. The big difference was when I look back on my time as a musician, it was so inauthentic. It was so me trying to be.
Right.
So I'm up there like I'm trying to be whatever I need to be here to get you to like what I'm doing. and then no, I don't do that anymore. Clearly I don't do that anymore. But but being up in front of people now, sure, I mean, all that training, being a musician, like how to hold a room and how to, you know, talk to 10,000 people. Sure, all of that really helped or does help at some degree or other. But I think the thing that's really obvious to people when you interact with me, either you watch an interview or you read the book, and I'm not giving you a version of me. This isn't a version. This isn't hey, you know, my whole, and look, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't have any problem with people putting their best foot out there and that. I don't. I just realized that somewhere along that pathway for me, that it was critically important to me. Like I realized that I had a value that I didn't understand was a value of mine until I realized it. And the value that I realized was authenticity. Like authenticity is critical to me. And my relationship to authenticity is very different from a lot of people's. Most people think authenticity is speaking your mind, right? It's not. Candor. It's right, like candor, like and you, right? Which isn't. That's called being a jerk,
right? Exactly.
But so my authenticity is holding myself to account for who I would say I am under any circumstance and under any temptation, and all of those things are generally my own. It's like I find myself like emotionally like getting caught up in something, and I have to remind myself, no. This is not who I am. Like if I,
that's really good.
You know, explode in a rage or I go off in some tangent, that's not who I would. In the cold light of day, I'm not that man. So why am I indulging that? Why am I, you know, I'm more interested in my own, you know, like limitations rather than holding other people to account for them.
You're a breath of fresh air, man. I mean, I'm telling you, people listening to this or any other of your interviews have got to be thinking, wow, that guy's got it. He's got the view of the world that is real, that's authentic. So we'll get into that. But I had a couple thoughts come to me, besides the fact you're a breath of fresh air, just your style about you. There's the story told, and you kind of go into this in your book, and you know, not this specific, but there's a story told about that many of us are born into a castle with thousands of rooms. We love each room when we're young. We go into each room and they're just so unique and special, have so much character. But over time, we invite some friends into some of those rooms and they say, wow, I don't really like the decorations in that room, or I really don't like this in that room. And eventually you're living in a castle with 1,000 rooms as a child, but by the time you get older, you're only occupying 1 or 2 rooms.
Correct.
And I think you make that clear in your book.
Yeah.
About the self-sabotage. What are some thoughts on that?
All right. So Martin Heidegger, the German philosopher, he had said, you know, each man is born as many men and dies as one. Now, you know, that's a great statement. It's kind of profound, but again, like, you know, the kind of thinking that I do, I go, well, what does that really mean? How does that really play out in a life?
Right.
And if anybody who's watching this right now, or you're in your car and you're listening to it, if you look back in your childhood, you were like a bigger version of the person you've become. So that is, there was more to you. You had more freedom with occupying this bag of skin and bones than you currently do. Totally. Right? So the example that I gave a little earlier, like I didn't experience myself as free to love. I felt as if there were certain moments where I could, but I would just kind of back out. I would like withhold it. Like, and what I later discovered was I wasn't prepared to be that vulnerable. Like I wasn't going to expose myself to you that way, because back there in the back of my mind somewhere, you were going to use that as leverage against me. So you're born as a human being, and the important part is the being, with a wide spectrum of being available to you in every moment of time, right? So right now you could be someone, and I mean like the expression of being, like being loving, being compassionate, being powerful, being industrious. You could be any one of those right there in this moment as a matter of choice in your life, but you don't. You continue to perpetuate the you that you've become moment to moment to moment. And so my view is that human beings exist on a spectrum of being that they've boiled down into a handful of ways of being. And those ways that you are is what gets out of bed every day, does what it does, goes to work, drives the car, says hi to your partner, handles your life. It's all within a very distinct range. And so I actually started to uncover for people in this book, how do I get access to that greater me that I know is there somehow, but I can't get my arms into it. I can't get to it. And so to me, that's how you free a human being up. You expose them to ways of being that either they forgot or didn't think they had available to themselves.
Maybe we're jumping ahead here a little bit, but how does someone get to that place of the day of disgust or the day of threshold? For example, I was at a speaking engagement last week where the father-in-law of a gentleman who I don't know told me a story. And he said, my son-in-law was making roughly $500,000 a year as a consultant in this very specific industry.
Yeah.
He says, you're not going to believe it, TJ. It's kind of what you teach. Live your dreams, live your passion, right? Live your future, live that ideal, that real you. He said he quit his job and he wanted to go be a fireman. So he's going through all the fireman training right now. And he says he gave up that $500,000. He said, how's the family doing? He says, they're working it out. They'll be fine. But here's an example of someone that had real courage to leave a world where there was a lot of income, and I'm assuming a lot of security, maybe a certain level of freedom. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'd rather do something that I make less money. It was George Burns who says, I would rather fail at what I love than succeed at what I hate.
Right. So the illusion is that we live, that there's some kind of connection between happiness and success. So that's the illusion. Now, success is fantastic. It's awesome, but it stands on its own.
Totally.
It's not for anything. It just does what that does. And I talk about that in the new book where I talk about the pursuit.
Yeah.
Like what are you actually pursuing? And ultimately, if you're honest with yourself, which is probably the most challenging thing of all, that's where the courage, by the way, to change your life begins by telling yourself the truth, right? Rather than, and sometimes that's really difficult to work out. Sometimes you're so ensconced in the lies that they seem like they're the truth. So the only thing you know is you're unhappy or I'm unfulfilled. That's the only thing you know you're off. You're not on. And when you know you're off, I'm telling you, and this is what I'd want anybody who's listening or watching this, you're living a lie right now, but somewhere in there you might think it's the truth for you. So, and it's challenging. It can be, some people can see it in a heartbeat, but most people, it's so hazy, so collapsed and conflated with other things, you can't really get clarity with it. Right. So in this book, I talk about if you examine your success right now, and if you examine what you have accomplished, and you look back in your life, you'll notice those successes were great, but the experience of them was fleeting. Like it was great, I did it, and then it was like you fell off the edge of a cliff. Like now you need to do something else. And the reason why that is because the success doesn't stand alone as success. It stands there as success to fix something. So it's designed to take care of something. What's it designed to take care of? Most people say, I want to be successful to make more money. And then they stop there. They don't keep going in. Like, okay, but what about more money? And what it comes down to eventually is if you had all that money and you had all those circumstances and who would you get to be then? And then they usually come up with something like, well, I could be at peace. And that's really what it's about. It's about having them be at peace. So they pursue the success, get into success, realize it never left them at peace, and off they go again.
Totally. Rather
than doing the work to get yourself at peace, right? And you might still go for the success, but it's not what I would call an in order to. Right. It's not like success in order to, whatever that might be.
Right.
And it's important for a human being to uncover that for themselves because, you could be 68 before you realize that's what you've done with your life. It would be, I would love to have discovered it when I was 22, but I didn't. I discovered it when I was like 42, but it was fine. I could get like, all right, fine. That's how it went. And everything I did to this point to get me here to discover this, that's perfect. That works. I was just happy to have discovered it for myself, to be honest.
That's just powerful stuff. You say, I write down here in my book, If You Think You Can, I talk about that many people are living by the have, then do, then be. Like if I have it, then I'll be. What I noticed in your book, so I wrote it down here, was no, you're teaching be, do, then you'll have.
Correct. Right. Now, there's a big, so there's that's kind of modeled around Sartre's pursuit of being, right? Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, who wrote, lots of really smart books, most of which I don't understand, but still, I read them and glean whatever I can out of them. Right. Because there's some great observations about what it is to be a human being and a lot of that kind of stuff. So he says human beings live in the pursuit of being. Mm-hmm. So we live in the pursuit of being all the time. Being something, right? Being something that I feel as if I'm currently not. Right. So, and that is what all of your ambitions and they're all modeled around pursuing being someone that you feel as if right now you don't get to be that person. Now, the problem with that is two things. One is pursuit. Well, pursuit means it's never here. I'm always pursuing.
So I was in front of you.
So there's always a hole to fill. There's always somewhere else to get to. And then we get to this really critical component, which, like, when you get it, you're like, boom, you can't have being.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't have it. You can't capture it. You can't capture happiness. You can't capture love. If you could, you'd make a fortune selling it in Walmart. You can't capture confidence. It's a beingness. It passes through you. And you can generate it and bring it to life, but you're a conduit for being. Like it passes through you. It's an expression of being. So it's an illusion and a complete superstition to pursue being, to have being. Your job in life is to be, is to express, is to be your greatest self, is to put yourself out there where people might judge you and might, laugh at you or who cares? You won't remember that in the last 10 minutes of your life. Here's what you'll remember. Did I do it or not do it? Did I express it? Did I say I love you? Did I say I forgive you? Did I reach when I thought I couldn't? Did I produce when I thought I was at my lowest? Like that, to me, that's what it is to be a human being, is to be in this moment and choose this moment. And I don't mean this in a superficial or abstract way. It's to look at yourself right now. And I mean right now in this moment and ask yourself, are you being and acting as someone that is a reflection of who you would say you are? Right? Are you currently doing in your life? Are you currently being in your life? My view of it is trying to get to some spot in the future is a tragic waste of the present moment. I mean, it's an opportunity. Right now is an opportunity to be your greatest self. You'll never get it back. There's no second shot at right now.
So what I'm hearing you say is get off the treadmill, whatever that self-sabotage treadmill is that you reverting and going back to and reliving in your life, right?
Well, this isn't a dress rehearsal. You're not getting yourself ready for something. This is your shot.
Right.
And I really, this is really your shot. I can't say this anymore. This is your shot. You won't, that person that you've been resenting for 10 years, this is your shot. And if you don't take your shot, you'll be resenting them for another 10. It's not going to stop. You need to intervene with yourself. You need to interrupt the drift of who you've become.
Love it.
And take a stand for who you could be.
Yeah, that was one thing you said in here. Stop resenting. Yeah. It doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve you. Doesn't serve them. Stop resenting people.
No.
That's one thing I've noticed about reading your book is it is real and raw and is to the core of human nature. Now, here's a question that I have for you. As I was reading it, I was thinking, is it wrong in its nature to pursue? Here's what I mean. How tall will a tree grow? A tree will grow as tall as it will grow. I think it's in human nature to forge forward, to push, to expand.
That's right. So I'm going to give you something here that I think will inspire you and allow you to make sense of yourself in a way, right? So the nature of pursuit, like I said a little earlier, is that whatever you're after, you don't have it.
Yeah, right.
Okay? It's not here. So then I pursue, right? That model of pursuit will leave you unfulfilled every single time. So that model of pursuit will just suck the life out of you. Life will go past you before you know it's hit you. I'm okay with pursuing. I'm actually totally into the notion of pursuing, but only as a way of illuminating the present. So I'm only interested in the future and the way that it influences the present. So I talk about it in the new book about being influenced by, being inspired by the future, even though it hasn't happened yet. But it's illuminating today.
Yeah,
it inspires you today. Like you get to be someone today because you're now in the game of this future. Getting to it is actually like the third prize. The first prize is that it inspires the present moment. The second prize might be, by the way, that it makes a difference for more people than just you.
Right. And you talk.
And then the third prize might be that I get there.
Interesting. You, in the beginning of this interview, you talked about what you call a pivot point. I think, is that the right term I'm using?
Yeah, pivot,
Pivot. By you getting into the personal development world. By the way, what's your definition of the personal development world? I come from a place of where I see a lot of benefits, but I see a lot of challenges too, right? Because people I meet so many people that have read every book in the personal development realm.
Yeah.
And they're still struggling with those same issues, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can almost overstudy yourself when you just need to leave it all alone and go be you.
Correct. So you have to remember it's an industry.
Yeah, it is, right?
So people are trying to make money, and I guess somewhere in there they feel as if their work might make a difference or not make it, whatever, right? But there's a lot of people who are just in it to sell lots of books and courses, right? And that's what they do.
True.
And it might make a difference for people. I doubt it, but it might. I'm more like the anti-self-help guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of rebel against it. I'm like the Sex Pistols of the self-help industry, you know, like I'm like anti-establishment. Like I can't stand it all. I think there's charlatans in it. I think there's voodoo and gobbledygook in it. Right. I think, and then at the other end of the spectrum, it doesn't penetrate enough. Like there's people like really well-intentioned and really smart, but it doesn't get into the muck with people, like what they're really dealing with, because it's too positive, right? So I love positivity. It's nice, you know, but not always and this goes against a lot of what people say, and I understand that and appreciate that, but it's not always necessary, right? Some of the greatest things I ever did in my life, I did it with a negative mindset. I don't think I can do it, and I suck, and this sucks, and I'm not, and I can't, and it's too much, and I'm overwhelmed, and then I did it. And I did it in the face of that. And that's where I want people to get, like, you know, it's fine to work on your mindset and, you know, and have things be a little more positive, a little more uplifting, and look on the bright side and don't focus on the darkness. It's fine. But if you're not doing that, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not like, you know, you're not a chair. You're an expression. And if you're expressing some darkness, you can just as easily express some light. It's not like, oh, shoot, now I need to, you know. So, you know, I'm really proud when people come along and say, I hate your kind of books, but I like yours. So I'm like, bring it on. That's exactly, you know, that's exactly what I want, you know. And look, I think there's a place for everybody. I really do. I think a lot of people can't take me, you know, I'm just too confrontational or like a provocateur, you know, they just don't.
What I love about you is that you can be that guy. Yeah. You even make it clear in the book. I'm not judging you. Just don't be you. Let me be me. But we don't live in a culture where really, our culture kind of goes against some of that.
Yeah. Well, that's all over the world, though. So being judgmental is part of the human condition.
Right.
Now, why it's part of the human condition is we're trying to work out who's in and who's out with us. And so you're in, you're out. Totally. Most of the people that read my stuff online read it and they've got like their mom in mind. They don't realize I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
They're like
someone else, nudge someone else.
Yeah. So I'm talking about being judgmental, like, oh yeah, I'm going to put that on her Facebook page. Like, dude, I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about her.
Love it.
You're the one, and so it can be challenging. Like, there's two things you need to watch out for when you're working on yourself. One, you can get too fascinated with this. You're not that interesting.
Amen.
You're just not. You're not that interesting. You got some wiring and some paths and maybe some crappy stuff happened. All right, okay, now what? Where do we go from here? Given all of that, and then having people like argue with me for their misery, like fight for it, right? I'm like, here's what you should do with that, and oh, I can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? I'm not saying I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, but if it sets you free, no, I'm not doing it. So you'd rather be miserable than free. And then they'll say no, and then when they think about it, they'll say yes. I would rather be miserable than let them off the hook.
Yeah.
So you'd rather fill your body with all those toxins and resentments and blood pressure. And the person that you're resenting is right now in the Girardelli shop having a hot chocolate without a care in the world.
Exactly.
It's like, doesn't serve anything. So one thing's to keep getting that you're not that fascinating, right? That's like really critical to me. But whatever you are learning about yourself, you have to ask yourself, in what way is this going to change what I'm about to do? So I might have read something like, well, that was really good. That was really powerful. But it doesn't mean anything unless as soon as you put the book down, you do something different.
Well said.
And then every time you do that something different. You're literally weaving a tapestry for a new life. With every passing moment, a new action, a different action. I did something there that I'd never done before. I said something. You're building a case for the kind of future you want, but it's actually influencing right now. It's actually showing up in the present moment. So I want to take away from people that you're a work in progress. So in some respects, you're always a work in progress, but you'll never be a work that's arrived.
Right.
There's no point when you're sitting there, with the existential glow, like, oh yeah, I think I could be floating right now. I think my feet are off the ground. I've finally arrived at all this. You're always a body of work. There's always new things to uncover. But again, don't make that so, as I like to say, don't spend your life picking fluff out your own belly button. Examine and then have it make a difference in your life. Examine, have it make a difference in your life. Examine, have it make a difference in your life. And the more difference it makes in your life, the more power you'll get out of stuff like reading books or doing seminars, because that stuff can work. You just need to find your one. And as I like to say, drive a bus through it when you find it.
Amen. I remember it was several years ago, 2004. I almost lost everything financially. I knew that my vision, ever since I was 15 years old, was to be in the quote unquote personal development world. Yeah. I went for a year and worked with Tony Robbins, and then I had a great experience through that, speaking 240 times in a given year. But there was a point in my life as well where I had to leave because I wasn't living my vision. I was still living his. So I called up my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, I said, we have our house in Utah being rented out, but I need a place to stay for just 2 months. I'm going to do my first seminar. Yeah. They said, you could stay in the basement of our house. I went there. Let me tell you, those 2 months turned into 5 years in the basement of that house. Yeah. Almost lost everything. I didn't lose my family, fortunately. My wife stuck by my side, but it was the most painful time in my life. And in my darkest moment and all my frustration, I thought, I'm not trying to live someone else. I don't want to go live someone else's life. I want to live what I feel in my core. And this voice came to me and said, you need to do that one thing you've been thinking was too hard, and you got to go do it. And that one thing was to write a book. And I thought, I don't have an office space to write in. I'm not going to write that book in the basement of my house. And in 2004, I got in the backseat of my car and I wrote that book. And that book, like your book, in a matter of 4 to 5 months, sold almost 100,000 copies. It's in its 15th printing right now, if you think you can. And and that just put me on a trajectory of being more authentic, living the me that I know that I have to give, and a leadership principle that I have shared, I don't know how many times, is on being authentic. And I use this story to illustrate the principle.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do as a dad is, for years, I do father and son or father and daughter interviews, like once a month. We just go to the master bedroom, we sit down, we visit. And I remember when Bryce was 11 or 12 years old, my oldest son, we do our normal little interview. And it usually goes for about 20 minutes long. And it's just a time for me to ask them about their lives, to make it not about me at all, to totally find out, ask questions and listen, and ask more questions and listen. And I remember I got to the end and it started to wind down. And I had this impression. And I said, Bryce, I've got a question for you. And I want you to be honest with me. How can I be a better dad? And I remember he looked at me like, you're the best dad there ever was. And I was thinking to myself, of course I am, right? But I said, no, really. I said, really, how can I be a better dad? And he paused. And humbly, he said, Dad, it seems like lately you've been snapping at the family members. You've been kind of mean. You've been that's what I would say, Dad. I remember walking out of that feeling, number one, free, I already knew it was a problem. Right. I already knew whenever I was snapping at someone or frustrated at this or that, that it wasn't the best me. I knew it. And when my son called me out on it, now I asked for it. It made me say, I'm going to work on that. I said to Bryce, I'll work on that. And I'll tell you, that has become a focus in my life, to know when I'm stressed and know how I need to respond to people so that I don't take my stress out on them. And I think when I tell leaders this, I said, go to your people, ask, how can I be a better leader for you? And it's not that we want to live someone else's idea or conclusion or belief of us, but maybe they might say something that rings true as to the better person that you can be. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think most people, when they have a realization about themselves and they tell somebody what they found out, the person who's listening is like, well, duh.
Right.
I mean, very few times are the people in your life like, oh, for the love of God, that's amazing. It's always like, well, I mean, when I came to my wife and said, I've realized this, I've really been struggling with expressing my love. She was like, go on. There was no like, oh no, I've always found you to be awesome. That conversation never happened. And so the people in your life can be a great mirror for you, a great way to see yourself. But what I tend to focus a little in, so I'll go like if I've got an upset with someone and it's a continual upset, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to like, okay, what's this really about, right? Which I talk about in the saying, but like your upsets are there for a purpose. They're not there just in a vacuum, right? Mostly what we do is explain our upsets. So we'll say stuff like, it's been a terrible day. This is why I'm being jerky, right? So the people in our life are kind of trained to go, oh yeah, okay, I get that. And they're trained to go that way because that's what you do with them. Then they can do it too, right? So now we're both agreed that we're only being jerky because we're having terrible days. Okay, good, awesome. But you'll notice your own upsets have a very familiar kind of flavor to them, right? So a very common upset for people is one called, you're not listening, right? Now, that's what I would call an old conversation that you've got going on with yourself. And you can tell like your repetitive upsets, like, oh yeah, I keep getting upset there, or I keep getting upset there. But take it back to the core and say, well, what is it I'm really upset about here? Like, what is it? If I could point to the one thing that I would say, that's what this is about, right? Because it starts with, well, they didn't, right? That's why I'm upset, right?
Oh,
or it will go in though, like, and they didn't do that. And what does that mean about this? Well, it means that they did that. Okay, and what does that mean about you and them? Well, that means they did that. And you'll get to it like, oh, it means they're not listening, or something like that, something along those lines. And then you'll see, if you look in your life, you'll see all your upsets are given by you're not listening, right? So you'll actually see the pattern of upsets in your life are all given by people not listening. Now, most people would say to you, oh, well, you should then make sure that they are, right? So, which is actually training people to be on the hook for your hang-ups. So I'm the one that gets hung up by people not listening, and now I'm going to have to make you explain yourself 30 times over so that I don't get upset, right? Which I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going. I'm going to be responsible for myself. So then, I mean, I know most, if not all, of what triggers me, right? The work that I've done has been extremely invasive. So, but I know most of what triggers me, right? So one of my big triggers is you don't care, right? So you don't care, right? So if I'm standing in a supermarket, I'm like a minesweeper looking for you don't care. I'm like spinning. I don't know I'm doing it, but I hear every little thing and see every little thing that could be correlated into some kind of conversation for, oh, see, they don't care. Oh, see, they don't care. Or they don't care. I mean, when I don't care goes for you don't care goes for a drive, I mean, all I see is people not giving a damn. That's everybody on the road. They don't give a damn. Look at this guy. What's he doing? Right? So I notice like it's a trigger of mine, like my experience, like you don't care. And by default, by the way, don't care for me.
And in the book, you share the example of I don't ask for, because of this belief, right. I don't ask for help.
I don't. I'll never ask for help. Why? Because why would you help me? You don't care.
Totally. The sofa's in the driveway.
Right. The giant sofa I had to drag in the house on my own.
It's a great.
Yeah. But that's really like, I noticed like most of my arguments were given by some fundamental belief that I had. So I would attach this to whatever you are saying or doing. I'm attaching that. I'm like understanding you via that particular internal conclusion that I have. And my conclusion about people is they don't care, right? And I see it in everyone. And in fact, if you're like really like loving and helpful to me, I know I'm just suspicious.
Okay.
Right. I can't, like by default, I can't break down. That people would actually care. Now, after understanding that and getting aware of that, and seeing the grip that it had on my life, I was able to create some distance, like that people don't care exists like here, and I can see it. Like I can witness it almost. Like I can see the machinery going and the emotions that go with it. I'm like, wow, it's like taking over my body right now. It's like, I'm being infested by something, And the more I got to see it and like kind of play with it a little and get underneath it and look at it, the more I could see that it's not me. That thing, that conclusion, that thing called people don't care, it's not me, but it shows up here. It comes up here, right? It's like where I'm sitting in a chair, up it comes, oh, there it is. And my view, I've coached probably, 50,000 people at a really intense personal level. And my view of coaching people, by the way, is that ultimately the greatest coaches will leave their client with a profound choice. And that's about it. And the rest is up to the client, right? Or as I like to say, I can't pee for you. You'll have to do that bit on your own.
Right.
But I can give you a choice where you felt as if you've never had one. And so understanding your own machinery and really starting to come to terms with it allows you to have choice in life. Like, and I mean choice in a moment where, I'm doing something, like I'm writing or something, right? And I'm in my head about how not smart I am, right? And I'm writing. And then my wife just puts her head in the door and says, have you seen my shoes? Oh, for the love of God, are you kidding? Okay. Like, I'm finding myself going,
Awesome.
like, you don't care? Like, what the? And then I catch myself like, oh my God, I'm starting to do it again. You know what I mean?
That is,
yeah. I mean, I catch myself doing it. Now I got a choice. I'm like, no, I haven't seen them. And off she goes.
This is the difference. This is powerful. So you're talking about personal awareness. You say in the book, you say, wouldn't it be awesome if instantaneously when you ate that food or that dessert or you got upset, if you immediately got the feedback that how that was destroying your world, how that was destroying your health, how that was right. And so it's awesome. You've just displayed right here how you have found that part of yourself, become very aware when it comes on, and then how to respond to. Do you still hold on? I mean, I just wrote down here. Do you still hold on to this belief that nobody cares, or have you evolved past that at this point?
Well, it's more like a neuronal trigger I've got. Mm-hmm. So it's not, is that like to say to people, you don't have beliefs? You are your beliefs. You are them. Like, it's not, if you could actually see what you believed, like see it like a thing, you probably wouldn't believe it. Your beliefs are your reality. They're like, it's really how it is. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like there's any alternative, right? It's just like, oh, it's not like, oh yeah, that's a belief of mine, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not a tangible thing, right?
Right. It's like, it's the fabric that makes up your reality.
It is.
When you start to unpick it, and then you start to come to terms with, wow, that is a belief of mine. Like, I believe that. Yeah. Right. Now, that realization, again, creates this kind of existential distance. Like, that's the thing there. And here am I now observing it. Whereas before, it and I were the same thing.
Right. Now doubt was introduced for whatever reason. Maybe someone, maybe my spouse or someone called me on something I said.
Sure.
And it caused me to go, really? Really, TJ? Do I really believe that? And it made me, right now that it's put some distance between that belief and maybe another option that's out there.
Right. And so if you kind of picture for yourself that who you are is a vast, wide and open space, and those automatic triggers make up for probably, 0.0000001% of that space, but you become so focused on them and so intent on them that it seems like they occupy everything.
Right.
So, one of the things that I ask myself frequently is, okay, so there it is. Now what? Now, I don't ask myself, now what, in some kind of frivolous way. I ask myself, now what? Like, well, there that is. I'm either going to indulge this thing, and I could go to town on you don't care, and I'm Scottish, we're known for it, right? We're kind of, most people only hang out with the Scottish because, in a fight, you're probably going to win, right? Yeah, right. So, right, it's not because of, our charm. But anyway, so if that's there for me to get triggered by, when I'm left with something like a choice, it really is like a very empowering space to be in. Like, I don't have to go down this route. And I'm not talking about, by the way, which, this drives me nuts in this industry anyway, speaking your truth, which, if your truth is garbage, you probably shouldn't speak it, right? Yeah. You should probably just keep it where it is, right? And I'm not saying suppress, I just mean acknowledge, accept, and release, right? Okay, I'm not going there. That doesn't serve me. So, my whole relationship with myself now, my personality, my wiring, all that stuff that goes on with me, it's just like we're inhabiting the same space. It's just like it comes up, there it is. And then I acknowledge it, and it disappears really quickly. I no longer live the life of my personality, which has been a radical thing, by the way, like the most mind-bending process. But my personality wouldn't be doing this, for instance. My personality isn't interested in community. My personality isn't interested in making a difference for people. My personality, it doesn't have a great deal of interest in being loving and vulnerable and compassionate and concerned. There's no real interest in that. It's very driven, self-centered. My personality has a massive concern for material goods and wealth and all that stuff. But now I've learned to just, like, now I get to have everything else but that, right? And whereas my life used to just be that, I think that's what my life was. Now I can kind of see that for what it is. And sometimes I can, dance with that a little. But mostly I'm interested in exploring everything else. Like, it's if one of the things that I took on in my life was being kind and loving. And it was the most weird experience of my entire, like, it was like somebody else had taken over my body, but we hadn't worked that out yet.
Yeah.
So like, I was like awkward, like, yes, I love you. It's like the weirdest, the words were getting all, like, I had a lisp and my mouth's not used to this word,
Right.
I mean, usually in Scotland, how I love you is I make fun of you, I mean, here's how I love you. You look terrible.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So it's this kind of like, acerbic wit, and so I was very uncomfortable in those kind of like profound moments when you're with another human being and being vulnerable in sharing your thoughts or your feelings, or where you're in pain, or where you hurt. And I hadn't done it. I was like, so I'm saying to my wife, I've been bottling up a lot of these emotional things. I can't, like, it was so weird. And then I remember one day, where it really came to, I realized in this process that why that happened with me, right? And I'd done it, and I didn't realize I'd done it. And that's another confronting thing for people to face, is that the way you've turned out, you did it to yourself. And it seems like somebody else, or my upbringing, or something else. I didn't realize that all through that process, I was making mostly subconscious choices and decisions. I was taking turns that I didn't realize I was taking, and then it ended up this way. So I realized that I'd been blaming my mom for how I'd turned out for a long, long time. And it was, if you'd asked me at the time, how's your relationship? Your mom would have said, it's fine. Like everybody else is, which is a terrible state for your relationship, for your mother to be in. Like, it's fine. Or, or some people say, I hate her, which I get that too. It's predictable and ordinary, right? That people would end up hating a mom or a dad or something.
Tough.
And look, some parents did some really crappy things. And, I certainly cherry picked a bunch of those for myself as an adult man. Like, I was clear why a relationship was the way it was. But anyway, I'd realized that in my withdrawing from my mom when I was younger, I withdrew from life. I withdrew from people. It wasn't just her. And I would have pointed to certain things, said, oh no, I met my wife and I fell in love with her. But yeah, as soon as the ring was on the finger, the door was shut. It was like, all right, let's get down to work now. All right. I didn't know how to be in a nurturing and loving relationship. I didn't know how to be that way. So I called my mom up, and I had this big, massive realization that I'd been blaming her. And I called her up, and my mom has a certain Scottishness to her, right? Like a certain kind of bullish, dry, And so I called her up. I said, how you doing? She goes, pretty good. I said, I'm sorry. Now, if you've had 30 years of blaming somebody, 35 years of blaming somebody, and suddenly you'd say, I'm sorry. I mean, that's a huge shift. That was a 180 from where I lived. And she said, sorry for what? I said, I blamed you for how I turned out. She said nothing. I said, I took my love away from you, and I took my love away from life, and I've turned into this hard man. I'm sorry for blaming you, and I'm sorry for trashing my life. Silence. And I said, I love you. Now, in that moment, I realized that was the first time I'd told this woman I'd loved her since I was 9. Like, I'd taken it away that long. And it was an act of violence upon her. Like, I'm going to take my love away, and you're done. Now, again, before I'd had that insight, I could have told you all the reasons why someone might have done that, or why I did it. none of which was serving me. I just had to deal with that. I'd done it. And I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too, baby. And I lost it. Like I lost it. Like it just went, whoa. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I'd never given 1 minute of thought as to what it was like for her to be my mom. I hadn't given an iota of thought, because since one of my first thoughts as a kid was to sit in judgment of her performance. Mm-hmm. And I'd become the judge and the jury and the executioner of that relationship. And she had no say in it. And even when she did do kind things for me, I would trivialize them, or I would put it down to manipulation, or la 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 la. And in that one moment, like I got my mom back, and I got to love the woman she is, not the woman that I think she should be. I actually got to be, and my mom's not a cuddles and warm blankets kind of mom. Some moms are like that. That was not my mom, right? My mom was, tough and relentless, and sometimes violent. And as an adult man, I started to get, well, given where she came from, of course. Mm-hmm. Nobody makes the personal choice to be an asshole as an adult. We turn out that way. We feel as if we had no say in it. And so my relationship never looked back. I actually got I got the mom that she is. A few years ago, I went over to Ireland to do a seminar thing. And I took the opportunity to catch a quick flight over to Scotland to see her. I went to see her. Mm. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. I bang on her door. She opens up the door. But she hasn't seen her son in 2 years. Her first words were, "What do you want?" Mm. She's not the kind of mom who's like, I laughed. Now, 5 years before, I would have been offended.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Right there, I laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, there she goes. Oh my gosh. And I hugged her. She's like, what? And then she's like, do you want a cup of tea? She was just, that's what she does. And rather than me making that wrong, she judges me, and you should do this and you shouldn't do that. And why are you doing that? And da-da-da. I get it. I know where it's all coming from. You love me and you don't want me to make any mistakes. You just can't say I love you. You have to just tell me what I'm doing wrong. I get it. I understand. So those kinds of breakthroughs are not only life-changing, but they allow you to impact every area of your life and start to take a real deep look at who you've become and who you're now standing for being. Who am I now going to be? Given all of that, who am I now going to be? And to me, that's where all the excitement and all the juice kicks in.
That was really powerful. Thank you for being real right there. I mean, the whole interview is real, but I felt it. This is a personal question, so you don't have to answer this.
Yeah, dig in.
What role has your wife played in you becoming this more authentic, real, vulnerable person? Is she taught you along the way to?
There's been some of that, my wife's like the shepherd, she always just reels it all in. I'm like a wild self-expression in life, I'm just kind of out there now, and I'm shaking every tree. My wife's done a bunch of work on herself. Sometimes we'll talk about that, but my wife's really been, she's my reality. It's where it's my home base. It's where my honor and my integrity lie.
Amen.
In my integrity as a man and a father and a husband, it exists in that tapestry of those conversations between her and I.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder to me of like my own feelings and emotions and all that stuff that rattles around in my cage. And then I'm grounded again in that kind of like the honor of who I say I am. And without her, none of this is possible.
Amen. What's your belief? I know we're winding down here, but I'm curious. Yeah. What's your belief on crying?
I cry all the freaking time.
I know you're an emotional guy, which I am too.
I'll cry at a game of soccer for the love of God. I don't care. What? What do you want me to? I'm leaking. What do you want me to do? Not leak?
You're not too tough to cry, is what you're saying.
No, and look, I'm a pretty tough man. I've done a lot in my life. I played competitive sports. I was the guy you didn't want to play against. I was the guy you hated. Mm-hmm. Being physical and all of that. Yeah, bring it on. I love that stuff.
Right.
But to kind of deny myself that expression, that ability, and a lot of men shut it down. Like they just shut it down.
Exactly.
It's got nothing to do with being weak. It's weak that you won't. You know,
when I coach people, I'll often can sense, and I'll say, "It's okay, John or Suzanne. It's okay. Let it go," and they will just let it go.
Yeah.
And it's freeing. Oh my gosh.
Sure.
So let me ask you this, because you triggered a thought. I've often said, it's one of the things I say all the time, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
After reading your book, I think you would agree that that's true as long as we are being our true self as we're becoming more, that we're not just pursuing something like success, hoping to be happy, right? That we're just being ourselves. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was, for years, this goes back 15 years ago, but for years, when someone would ask me when I went to the store to pay for something, and I would give them my credit card or debit card, and they would say, "Can I see your ID, please?" I had a visceral reaction to that. I was like, who are you to question who I am? This is my card. Take it. Right? There's this, I didn't ever say it out loud, but I felt every emotion associated with it. And I remember this had been going on for a couple years, and I'm in the middle of writing If You Think You Can, and I'm writing all about thought processes and how to be the best that you can be and how to overcome that negative voice inside and all that. And I remember I drove to Macy's department store, and I was planning on getting a shirt. I knew exactly what I wanted to get, right? So I show up, and I drive in, and I know in my mind I'm about to have a negative experience because I know they're going to ask me for my ID card, and then inside I'm going to get, frankly, pissed off, right?
Right.
And I thought to myself, I paused for a minute, I reflected, and I share this with the audience just to say there might be something in your life that you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
I paused in my car, and I thought, it became aware to me that I had this trigger going on.
Yeah.
I said, that's not the best of me. That I don't need to behave like that. I'm better than this. And I remember I closed my eyes and I imagined myself going in the store, picking the shirt up, going to the cashier,
it's great,
having the cashier say, "Can I see your ID?" And rather than go down the rabbit hole of, "Why do you question me?"
Right.
In my imagination, I went to, "Thank you for watching out for me. Thank you for caring enough to make sure that this is my card. I would be happy to give you," and I even said in my mind, "I'll be happy to give you my driver's license." And I gave them in my imagination.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit, but it started to become a little freeing in my imagination. So I went through that movie 10 times. And then what do you think happened? By rehearsing that new way of behaving and thinking, I went in, I got that shirt, I went, I anticipated, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I said, before she could even say, "Can I see your ID?" As she was saying it, I was already pulling it out. And in that moment, I said to myself, "Yes, TJ, you can do this. You can be this." And then I went home that day, and on the back of all my cards, I wrote down, "Check ID," to confirm it to my subconscious that that's exactly what I want. No more.
Yeah.
And so now I'm thankful for when they do it. And I think, would you agree, people can, through their imagination, change their perspective, change the way they view the world, change the way they view their mother, change the way, and then respond in a better and a more appropriate way.
Yeah. Look, one of the important things that you just said there, you live in a conversational domain.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And your emotions are in a dance with that conversation. And where there's repetitive emotions, there's a repetitive conversation, right?
Right.
There's a little bit more to that, like just a little underneath the level of what you said there, but you interrupted in exactly the right way. And so that is, you shifted the conversation. So you shifted the conversation from one of like resisting the intrusion to one of like acknowledging and being grateful for something.
Right.
So you went from this kind of space where it's coming at you to now you're influencing the situation rather than responding to it. So you're creating something as opposed to reacting to something.
Right.
And, anybody can do that. Anybody can create. So you can create love where there is none. If you took on your whole day from the perspective of love or confidence or passion or whatever, your whole day would change and your actions would change that end, because you'd be asking yourself, well, if who I am is loving, what should I do right now? Or with who I am is confident, what would I be doing right now? If who I am.
Exactly.
And most people say, well, I'm not feeling confident. You don't have to.
You don't have to.
No, if you say if who I am is confident, what would I be doing? And by the way, this is the other thing. When who I am is confident, I'm not always feeling confident, but I behave in a confident way.
That's what I teach. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you will behave confidently, even when you're not feeling it, the feelings of confidence will come.
Sure.
Anyway.
Most of the great things I did in my life, I did with no confidence.
Totally. Back is against the wall. Necessity.
Don't think I can do it.
Nobody believes I can do it, but I'm
never going to work.
Oh, yeah. I've been there, done that, got the team.
Uh-huh.
Well, I love it. You have all kinds of great nuggets in this book. I encourage everyone to get it. Stop testing people that your reality is based on an illusion. You got to figure out what that illusion is. You talk about the 3 conclusions of the beliefs we have about ourselves, the belief we have about others, the belief about how we view life. I love in your last chapter, and you said it earlier, you said this quote, basically, you are not broken. There is nothing to fix. You're not a bleep chair. I'm adding a word there, so they'll have to look it up, right? You're an expression. So get out there and express your future. Make it something great, something worth giving your life to. Everything else is just complaining and bleep coffee. I love that. So you say, what is my future telling me to do right now? Whatever it is, big or small, act on it.
Correct.
This has been an awesome interview. Listen, I just think you have powerful words here. I encourage everyone to read your book, both your books. I tell you what, but this is the new one. Stop doing that shampoo, if you will.
That's right.
I tell you what, listen, let me just say to the audience, there are truths in this book that when I just underlined them. I mean, just the things you said were like, yep. And part of it, I just sense from you that you've got to be more emotional in the sense that you're real with yourself, that you're real with others. And like you said, not to be a jerk, but to be just true and live your values, whatever they are. And we could spend a whole day talking about all.
For sure. I got a whole thing about values, but absolutely.
Exactly. So anyway, it's been great to have you on the show. How would you suggest people get a copy of your book or find out more about you?
Yeah, so you'll get the book anywhere where great books are sold. And by the way, including, believe it or not, places like Kroger and Walmart, and you'll find it there too, although the title's a little more bleeped out in those stores than it is in Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Amazon. You can get the audio book, and I narrate all my audio books, so you'll get to listen to Shrek tell you how to get your life together. You can also catch up with me on my website, GaryJohnBishop.com. You can catch up with me on Instagram, Gary John Bishop. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. And one of the things that I'm really committed to, TJ, is, making a difference for people is my life. It's what I've given my life to, and empowering people and enabling people to make the kind of change in their life they really want to make. And so you can interact with me for free. I give out a lot of free material. I'll send you emails with great, really good, usable stuff, not like surfacey stuff, but really penetrating and good stuff that allows you to really question and inspire and take your life on a new way. So, you don't have to be a rich person or even have spare money to follow me, but you can get lots of great insights and wisdom that you can use for your real life for no money at all.
That's really great. And that's very kind of you. I feel I operate the same way. Just out there to help people unleash their greatness within, whatever it is, right?
Correct.
Be you. Anyway, thank you for being on the show. Let's stay in touch. And I wish you the very best. Thanks again, brother.
Thanks, TJ.
Podcast listeners, thanks for listening. You've taken time out of your schedule, and I really appreciate it. Now do me a favor. If you like what you heard, star it. Thanks. Now go unleash your greatness within.